Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. We shall now begin the third plenary session of the day. Hope you enjoyed your coffee break. We'll definitely need coffee around this time of the day. We are going to talk under the theme of creative education, plan for cooperation among countries in the Asia-Pacific region to produce creative global leaders. I would like to introduce the moderator for this session. It is President Kim Do-yeon of University of Ulsan and also the former Minister of Education, Science and Technology. I would like to move the microphone over to him.
Well, thank you very much. Well, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Well, I'm going to be the session chair of this afternoon session 3, which we will focus on the cooperation among countries in the Asia-Pacific region to produce creative global leaders. Well, it is indeed true that the globalization is a big issue, and we have to concern the globalization in university education. And particularly, many ones says that the 21st century will be the Asian and Pacific region. That will be the century for Asian and Pacific region. So I think in this session, we will surely have a very fruitful discussion for the cooperation of universities in Asian Pacific region. So for that, we have 5 speakers, one from Korea, one from USA, 2 from Japan, and last one from Singapore. So this really will be the universities from Asia Pacific region. So we will have in total 80 minutes for this session, and we have 5 speakers. Therefore, I'd like to remind to each speaker that you have 15 minutes, okay? Not more than that, 15 minutes. Okay, let us start from President Young-gil Kim, the president of Handong Global University, and he's going to talk about, well, the globalization and the cooperation between the universities. Okay.
Good afternoon. I am the first Korean speaker. I'm a little bit nervous. Actually, I prepared too many slides. So I'm going to very quickly go over. My talk is 2-part. One part is educational philosophy and paradigm for 21st centuries. And second part is like the actual brief implementation, how creative thinking was conducted at Handong. Title is New Direction for Higher Education in the 21st Centuries. And specific is an integrative and holistic approach for creative higher education in the 21st century, from isolation to integration, space, time, and matter. We passed from the agricultural ages through the industrial ages and knowledge base. Now we are getting into the bio-green economy ages, and we will face with ubiquitous humanization ages. And we got information from data, then going to knowledges, then we got wisdom. And wisdom is what 21st century keyword. And we get wisdom from spirit. And UNESCO is announced that the higher education is confronted with formidable challenges and must proceed to the most radical changes. And the renewal it has ever been required to undertake. So our societies is undergoing profound crisis of values. This is important. Transcend the mere economic consideration and incorporate deeper dimension of morality and spirituality. We changed from industrial to information, science, Newton physics to the Einsteins, and hardware to softwares, and economy-wise from national to global. In 20th centuries, it was geared to students to memorize much of the content in the textbooks. But in the 21st centuries, education should teach students how to explore the unknown, to challenge the impossible, and to develop the ability to be creative. Four critical elements in most educations are the critical thinkings, analytical reasonings, and written communications, and problem solving. This is a four element for creative education. And life is not like a multiple choice test, or right or wrong. But we teach is right or wrong. What is this? This, if you see this, if you see this side is a duck. If you see that side is a rabbit. So this is a duck and rabbit. But these are dual natures. So education should be the dual natures. 21st century education's attributes are these four attributes. And transdisciplinary educations, and teamworks, honesty, integrities, globalizations, and cyber ubiquitous literacy, and equal literacy. And in the industrial age, it was a macroscopic educational paradigm from the macroscopic to subatomic and integrative. In the macroscopic physical world, the space-time and the matter were separate, independent, and absolute, and deterministic. And so based on the cause and effect reasoning. But in Einstein's, in the 21st century is Einstein's relativistic and quantum physical worldviews. In subatomic, macroscopic world, space, time, and matter are interactive, complementary, and commutables. Heisenberg's uncertainty principle stated that position and momentum cannot be known to an arbitrary precision. So we moved from the predictable cause and effect in the 20th centuries. Now we are in 21st centuries. We are uncertain, chaotic probability. In the 21st centuries, the three ingredients for education are globalizations and futurization and humanization. Globalization important in the networking. Futurization, we have the speed is very important. Also, we are human beings are not only materials. Where human beings are from the materialism to the human life. So from tangible to intangible is more values in the 21st century. Wisdom and creativity belong to humans. And we have to live together. This 사람인자, 인재가 미래다. So I think education is more important. We have to live together, not alone. Henry Lewis in the Harvard was saying, we have forgotten that we teach humanities to help students understand what it means to be human. And Anthony Kroman in the Yale Law School said, questionable meaning of life was largely abandoned by college and university professors. I think in 21st century, humanization is very important. Not only knowledge transfer. Living is an interaction between physical body and earthly environment through five senses to soul and spirit. And this whole person education is important. Now I'd like to go over to the from step to creativity. This is a real, this education for creativity for all. This concerned with this creative education. We start from creativities and entrepreneurship and marketing and business economy, finally. For creativity, we need divergent thinkings. For innovation, we need a convergent action for innovation. creativity is a thinking of new things or thoughts, these are ideas. But innovation is doing, that idea, doing new things or thoughts, this action. For creativities, we have to think both ways. It's a vertical thinking and also lateral thinking. Vertical thinking means digging same hole deep. And lateral thinking is digging a new hole in the new locations. Creativity requires the three elements: synthetics capability, analytical capability, and practical capability. When this meet, then creativity achieved. For creativity, we have to synthesize IQ and EQ and PQ and SQ. Einstein once said that imagination is more important than human knowledge. For creativity, you have to synthesize the macroscopic view and relativistic view. Then we can achieve the practical capability. Actually, the GPS navigators, they're using both macroscopic and microscopic. Now, so very quickly go over, maybe I have 5 minutes, so I'm going to keep time. Chairman. Handong was opened in 1995. From the beginning, it was global. And education is not only accumulating knowledges. We need honesty and integrity, then academic knowledge, then globalization. This is what the education framework of Handong for the global characters, global professional ability, and global leadership training. We established Global Edison Academy in 95. This Edison is actually is an acronym. Is what EDISON is what stands for. Whole person education, cross-disciplinary, interdisciplinary education, education to make leaders. And in 1950 was business, technology, and law was separate. Now, as time goes on, this expanded, it's merged into. Handong created like a global enterprise entrepreneurship combining of the knowledges and capital. Globalization is something is good, something bad. Globalization also causing large gap in the human capital formation or brain drains. So Handong was involved in the work together with Mongolia and Uzbekistan and Afghanistan through UNESCO. UNESCO designated Handong as a host universities for educating developing countries. France in the Figaro reported this is a very unique model to assist developing countries through education. Also, we have the OECD agreement sending our intern agreement. And this is what really the global partnership between developing countries and developed countries. So this reducing the knowledge gap through UNESCO UNITWIN, UNDP, and OECD and ideas. For green development is not national, it is a global issue. That's why we have to work together globally. And at Handong, we have the GGRI, the Global Green Research Institute, working with the KIT and RPI and Israel Technion and ideas. Okay, exactly 10 minutes. So if you need more, this slide, ask us this Hangyong, okay? And this is final. We have to work together. We have to open up our mind to the world for global prosperity and peace. Peace and prosperity in the 21st century depend on increasing the capacity of people to think and work on a global and intercultural basis. As technology opens borders, educational and professional exchanges opens our mind. Asia Pacific, we have to open up the whole world for global peace and prosperity, for keeping our environment clean. Thank you very, very much.
Well, thank you, President Kim. Well, honestly, it's quite rare that I heard the word honesty in university education. I think, well, what he mentioned, President Kim mentioned, integration and honesty should not be forgotten in university education. And in that sense, various models in education adopted by Handong Global University seems, it's really, we can assume that it's we have to benchmark. Thank you very much. Well, let us move to our second speaker. Well, he's from Cornell University. Well, I think all of you may know quite well about Cornell University. And David Scorton, Dr. David Scorton will give us also about the cooperation between universities.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And I want to congratulate my colleague from Handong not only for an excellent speech, but congratulate you for the high ethical standards you are setting. And even though we did not discuss our speeches before today, I'm actually going to follow along on the same theme. So I thank you for setting the tone. It's a great honor to be a part of this global forum, and a wonderful personal pleasure to be back in Seoul again. For many times I have had the privilege of visiting this exciting city and to see how well things are going for many colleagues and friends. Without a doubt, the need for global talent is growing each year, and of course universities are going to play an expanding role in meeting that need. I really have two themes to sound today. The first has to do with the globalization and partnership of education, and the second, following the excellent speech that we just heard, is that those of us who have the privilege of having such assets as we have in East Asia in general, and the United States and Western Europe, we have to join together to raise all the ships so that human capacity can prosper in the world. I'm going to predict that many more universities in Asia will soon be included among the most highest ranked institutions of higher education in the world, in part because of substantial investments that these countries have made and that the families have made in higher education for their children. And I want to argue today that as the economy continues to recover and higher education continues to expand globally, all of us in developed nations and emerging nations alike have responsibility not only to educate our own citizens, but to help all of those who aspire to higher education throughout the world to achieve that aspiration as a pathway to personal success and societal contribution. At stake is no less than our ability to continue as a species to live on this shared planet with greater health and prosperity in a sustainable and environmentally responsible manner. As the nations of Asia assume ever larger roles in the global economy, and especially as they continue to develop, for example, trade and investment opportunities in sub-Saharan Africa and elsewhere in the developing world, it will be important to put in place not only policies that foster stronger and more beneficial economic alliances, but also to join with other universities in Asia and those in the US and Europe and the international community of donors and aid organizations to build human and institutional capacity in the developing world. Greater attention to higher education must underpin all of these efforts. As an example, sub-Saharan Africa today is home to 300 million of the world's poorest people, and for decades the continent has presented a formidable challenge in terms of development and integration in the global economy. Yet the nations of North America, Europe, and increasingly Asia, beyond collective humanitarian responsibilities, have a vested interest in ensuring that the growth and integration of sub-Saharan Africa occurs quickly into the global economy. Exports from Africa to Asia have increased substantially in recent years, tripling between 2000 and 2005. The exports include oil and other extractive natural resources, agricultural products, and increasingly manufactured value-added goods such as processed food and consumer products. African nations have also increasingly become a significant market for Asian exports, with demand for Asian goods in Africa growing by nearly 20% per year. A positive disposition toward Africa has found expression in the commitment of many leaders in the world, including Secretary General Moon Ban-ki, to make African development what he called a personal priority. As Asia's economic connections to Africa continue to expand, Asian nations have an economic interest and a social responsibility to join and to lead nations in North America and Europe to ensure that African development proceeds in ways that bring maximum benefits to all partners and to the planet. Building human and institutional capacity through education is critical to these efforts. When it comes to government investment in R&D as a fraction of GDP, the U.S. is fourth and South Korea fifth in the world, and the U.S. and Europe still lead the world in scientific publications, with nearly two-thirds of the world's scientific publications coming from the U.S., but every year Asia increases its share of research articles at a very rapid pace, and the quality and citations of these articles. In terms of higher education attainment, South Korea, along with Japan and Canada, now rank ahead of the United States in the percentage of adults with post-secondary degrees. Students from South Korea in particular account for 1 in 7 of all international students in the U.S., with nearly 70,000 students from Korea now attending U.S. universities in the last year. There has also been a growing ability within many Asian nations, of course, to develop top-level systems of higher education, increasing quality and access to higher education at home. Once again, we have to look no farther than the country that we're having the conference in. Korea's world-class university project is expected to invest some $600 million over the next 5 years to further improve the already very impressive research capabilities at 30 Korean universities, with the goal of making South Korea the hub of higher education in East Asia within a decade. Cornell University has been a proud partner, for example, in the Brain Korea BK21 initiative with Seoul National University in the field of agricultural biotechnology, and we're proud to have a variety of cooperative and exchange agreements with several excellent Korean universities in fields from nanotechnology to material science to veterinary medicine. We view these efforts to build institutional capacity for higher education in Korea as bringing benefits at least as strong to us as to our Korean partners. Many of us in the U.S. are following with great interest the development of the great experiment that is Songdo Global University campus in New Songdo City. This global university already has several international university partners, including from the U.S., and the plans are to enroll as many as 12,000 students in New Songdo City by 2012. In addition, many Asian universities, including some in Korea, are becoming interested in attracting more international students to their own programs and to regional programs, modeled in some ways on Europe's Erasmus program that would allow students to take advantage of educational opportunities and internships elsewhere in the region. All of these developments reflect the reality of a highly interconnected, globalized world of education as it is in the economy. International students at my university at Cornell have been enrolled since 1868. And today, of 20,000 students at Cornell, more than 3,400, or 17%, are international students from 113 countries. Korean students are one of the largest groups of international students at Korea, and Asian nations account for 6 of the top 10 nations represented among this large group of international students at Cornell. And just as Cornell transforms the undergraduate and graduate students who come to us from abroad, these students in turn transform Cornell, exposing all of us at Cornell and in the U.S. to other perspectives and other ideas. International research and outreach is also vital to the development of world-class universities, providing intellectual challenges for faculty and students, as the previous speaker said, promoting very important cross-cultural understanding, and in partnership with other international colleagues, addressing significant problems where they are the most urgent. In 2001, we were proud at Cornell to host the first United States Republic of Korea joint seminar on plant molecular genetics and breeding on our Ithaca, New York campus. The seminar was developed with the support of the National Science Foundation in the U.S. and the Science and Engineering Foundation in Korea to enhance cooperation among the science and engineering research centers in our 2 countries. The program involves joint research projects, seminars, and scientific exchanges. To bring Cornell to the world, our university is launching many new teaching initiatives and continuing to form new research partnerships in all corners of the globe. In addition to our medical program in Doha and our partnerships with institutions in Korea, we have recently begun offering, for example, a Master's of Professional Studies degree in International Agriculture and Rural Development with a focus on integrated watershed management at Bahir Dar University in Ethiopia. In Mwanza, Tanzania, we partner with the Bugando Medical Center and the Weil Bugando University College of Health Sciences to train medical students and a variety of health workers. Demand for our expertise at Cornell has expanded beyond the university's traditional research spheres of agriculture, nutrition, engineering, and the physical and mathematical sciences to contemporary social science topics such as trade and productivity centered in our School of Industrial and Labor Relations, tourism and hospitality, the largest industry in the world, through our School of Hotel Administration, and housing and human development in the College of Human Ecology. And I'm pleased to say that we were honored to have our Dean of the School of Industrial Labor Relations, Professor Harry Katz, address this forum in the last plenary session. Today, Cornell seeks to respond to the challenges of globalization by bringing the world to Cornell and Cornell to the world. As the rapidly emerging countries of Asia further develop their own capacity for higher education, we look to these institutions to partner with us in providing opportunities to students from other lands as well as their own citizens. In Africa and elsewhere in the developing world, development assistance must be designed to support local efforts to understand and solve local, national, and regional problems by improving the skills of individual citizens and the capacity of education and research institutions across the region. Success in our world must be measured not only in gross domestic product, but in improved human well-being and development and the benefits that will accrue to all of us as neighbors in this small world. I call on educational, research, and service organizations, as well as governments and corporations in the U.S., Europe, and Asia, to use our growing capacity to contribute not only to ensure that our own citizens can prosper in this innovation economy, but also to ensure that economic growth, healthier and better nourished populations, and good environmental stewardship are possible for all of us throughout the world. Nothing less than the future of our shared planet is at stake. Kamsahamnida.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, President Scruton. Well, as he mentioned, in the 21st century, the gifted and talented people, particularly with the global mind, becomes more and more important. And for that, the universities around the world should cooperate, should work together. And he has given various examples of cooperation that Cornell had. And thank you again for your presentation. Okay, now let us move to our third speaker. Well, third speaker, President, National University of Singapore, Tan Cho Truan. Well, as you know, maybe one of the most emerging university in the world is the National University of Singapore. There's no doubt about it. So I think he may give us very good examples of cooperation and good examples of education. Please.
Good afternoon, and I'd first like to thank the organizers for giving me the honor of addressing this very prestigious conference, and also for the very warm hospitality. As I think the theme of this forum is extremely timely, because as was pointed out in the keynote lectures this morning, our world is changing very rapidly, and it's driven really by globalization, the much greater interconnectedness between individuals and societies, and the rapid pace of change arising from rapid flows of information, people, goods, and capital. We are also seeing the rise of knowledge societies, societies that thrive and contribute through creative application of ideas, of technologies, services, and goods. As the chairman has just mentioned, we're also in the period of a resurgent Asia. And if you look at this chart, it shows that Asia contributed to half the world's total GDP for nearly 2,000 years, until about 1850. But of course, since then, in the recent decade, we've seen a remarkable resurgence of growth in China and India, and Korea is a very leading example also of this very dramatic growth. So what this means really for nations is that the ability to create important new knowledge and to use it in the global arena is going to be more and more critical for the advancement of societies and for individuals. And this links back to the theme of this conference, which is how do actually nations nurture the type of human capital required to achieve this. I want to focus on a particular question which I think is central to this issue, and that is, how do we actually nurture graduates who are going to be effective and successful for the 40 to 50 years of their future working life, given the very rapid pace of change? And I'd like to really look at this first maybe through the eyes of students just entering the university, and then later on from the point of view of the universities. I think for students who are in university now, you probably are aware that there are three quite fundamental shifts that are occurring in the workplace of the future. And I like to frame this maybe because this is 3:30 after quite a long, hard day, in terms of a question for you. What do you think in the US, an average college graduate, how many jobs do you think that graduate would have before he or she is 27 years old? And according to the US Department of Labor in 2008, the average US college graduate held 6 jobs before the age of 27 and 10 jobs before the age of 42. So that's a very large number of jobs over a period of time. I wasn't able really to find equivalent data for Asia, but here's a parallel piece of information. When we do our graduate employment survey in the National University of Singapore, about 41% of our fresh graduates report that their first job was not directly related to the course of their study. So what does this really mean for students in university today? It means that in the past, we are really training ourselves largely for a career for life, perhaps 3-4 jobs during the duration of our working life. But today and going forward, we really have to think about nurturing individuals who are going to be successful in a lifetime of careers. Many jobs, many of them in different sectors, quite different from the original training you had in university. And some of the most important jobs of the future may not even have been invented today. So this has very profound implications for students and for universities. The second question I'd like to pose to you all is, if you look at these 3 photographs, they show 3 research labs. And my question for you is, which one is in the US, which one is in China, and which one is in Singapore? So since I only have 15 minutes, I'll tell you that the first one, the one on the left, is Tsinghua University in China. The middle one is National University of Singapore. And the third laboratory is actually Cornell University in the US. Now, the point of this slide is to say that no matter whether you're in Seoul, in Singapore, in the US, or in China, you're going to have to work and live with many different colleagues and friends across different countries, with many different cultures and different backgrounds. And therefore, it is very fundamental that the students that graduate today are nurtured for a global setting and not just a local setting. And the third area, I think, which is very important for us to consider in nurturing graduates for the future, is the ability to deal effectively with complexity. And I think this was very nicely highlighted by our first speaker. If you reflect for a minute on some of the world's and Asia's most critical challenges today and in the future, we can think of the massive pace of urbanization, how to make this more sustainable. We can think of the tremendous challenges of public health and aging. And you can also think of the complexities of communications and logistics in the future. Each of these are complex, large-scale problems, and each of them require extremely cross-disciplinary approaches, precisely as the first speaker has said, a much more holistic and integrated view of issues. So for students and for universities, the issues are actually quite similar, because for universities, our challenge for the future is really also how to work with our students to nurture graduates who are going to be leaders in a lifetime of different jobs, who are successful in different diverse cultural settings in a globalized world, and who are effective in dealing with complex, large-scale challenges. And I think for universities, we have to realize that just as globalization has impacted on almost every other institution that we know of, that universities too must become global in nature. Now, there are many ways to define a global university. I believe there are at least several characteristics which I've listed down here, but in the interest of time, I shall only focus on one, which is really about innovating education for a globalized world. And here, please forgive me for drawing on some examples from my university, because it's a university I know best. As Professor Squarton has mentioned, there are also tremendous innovations happening in Cornell and many other universities. So I just want to use NUS as an example of some of the ways we are thinking about this and to illustrate some general principles. The first is, what are the type of attributes that we need to nurture for the graduates of the future? And the first and probably the most critical one really is about critical thinking. Thinking critically about issues, thinking differently about them, learning how to frame problems in a different way, and not just understanding how to solve problems that have been defined for you. This is going to be a very important attribute for the future. The second is learning how to learn. Long-term, through the duration of a career that may go into many different types of fields of inquiry, and also across many disciplines. And the third, which I think is what I call the zoom-in, zoom-out quality, is going to be very important. The ability to zoom in detail at a problem, but yet be able to zoom out and see the bigger picture. This is fundamental to dealing with complexity. And what this really means for universities and for students is that we cannot afford an overly narrow, specialized approach to education, because you then lack the intellectual base in order to be able to zoom out when you need to do this. Now, beyond critical thinking, another very important attribute really is what I call the spirit of the explorer, the boldness to break new ground, resourcefulness, and resilience. Communications is very critical, and in the context of Singapore, which is a very small little island, the use of English is particularly important. And finally, how we nurture people to be responsible global citizens, responsible in terms of honesty, integrity, doing the right things, and also being effective in different cultural settings. And let me touch a little bit upon this aspect, how we actually try to do this in NUS. And like Cornell, we use the same nomenclature. We try to bring the world to NUS, and we try to bring NUS students to the world. We try to bring the world to NUS by creating a highly diverse university community. So the numbers are actually quite similar to what Professor Scorton mentioned. We have 20% undergraduates, 70% graduates, and half our professors are from overseas, from more than 100 countries. We offer joint degree programs in NUS, so if you enroll in Duke NUS Graduate Medical School, you are taught by professors, some of whom come from Duke in the US, and you get a joint degree from both NUS and from Duke University. And this gives students the opportunity to learn from top professors from both universities. And every year we have about 1,200 students on exchange into NUS. We also send many of our students overseas. About half of our undergraduates go on some overseas education experience, and we have about 40 joint and double degree programs with top universities around the world. These joint programs allow universities with complementary strengths to work together to create programs that bring a very distinct value proposition for students, things that single universities by themselves will find difficult to do. I want to just end up with 3 very quick examples to give you a more specific feel of what we mean when we talk about global education initiatives. The first is the NUS Overseas Colleges. This really is to train people to be entrepreneurs. It's experiential entrepreneurship education. Our students spend 1 year in high-tech companies overseas, and they take courses at our partner universities. We have 6 overseas colleges. So, for example, students in Silicon Valley will be attached to high-tech startups in Silicon Valley for a year, and they do courses in Stanford. And we have this in Philadelphia, Shanghai, Stockholm, Bangalore, and Beijing. And there is a new program, about 9 years old, but the outcomes are quite promising in terms of the entrepreneurial activity of these alumni, as well as they're being sought after by employers. The second example I want to give is what we're doing to completely revamp engineering education. And one of these efforts is to create a special program which we call the Global Engineering Program. This is for small groups of really motivated and outstanding students, and it has a number of distinctive features. The first is you can accelerate, so you can finish this design-centric Bachelor of Engineering course in 3 years, including 1 year overseas. Now, it's design-centric because the whole curriculum is built around a series of research projects which the student does. You have a lot of flexibility, and you can do your undergraduate research opportunities programs with NUS partner universities overseas during your 1 year abroad. And then at the end of that, you then go on to pursue a master's degree in Cambridge University or MIT. So at the end of 4 years, you end up with a B.Eng program from NUS with great flexibility and a master's program either from Cambridge or MIT. And the last example I want to just briefly mention is the NUS University Town, which for us is really the most exciting program in the future because we believe it will completely transform the nature of undergraduate education on our campus. This slide shows some pictures of it. We are building this university town across a highway from our main campus right now. That's the physical infrastructure, which the first phase will be ready by 2011. But the whole idea is that there will be about 4,500 students staying in colleges in University Town. But we will create an energizing community that is global and Asian. So we have a tremendous diversity there, 60% local students, 40% international students, coming from all disciplines, from medicine to music, graduate and undergraduate students. The students will stay in colleges, and within the college, there will be small groups of them that will study together. And what they will do is actually explore important global issues in freshman seminars and senior seminars, but also because of the diversity, to understand the Asian perspectives. So if we talk about sustainability, it means different things to someone from Singapore, someone from China, someone from Korea, someone from Zurich, and it's very important we learn from that on that basis. And finally, we'll have actually research campuses of MIT and ETH Zurich in University Town, and our students will have the ability to study from these students, from these faculty, as well as to undertake undergraduate research opportunities programs with them. So in summary, I think the rapid pace of change in our globalized world and the rise of Asia create huge challenges for humanity, but they also create great opportunities. And universities, I believe, have a very fundamental contribution to make to better prepare graduates who will be able to lead in the transformation that we'll see in the future through a whole series of different jobs and lifetime careers. Individuals who are going to be able to work with colleagues and friends from around the world, and also who are going to be effective in dealing with complex, large-scale challenges that will surely test us in the 21st century. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, President Tan Cho Chun. Well, frankly, I didn't know that the university students presently at the university may change their job during their lifetime up to 10 times. Well, he has explained us what is global university, and particularly he mentioned the nature of education in global university. Well, thank you for sharing with us his experience in NUS. Now let us move to our Japanese colleague, first from Ritsumeikan University. Maybe, again, all of you may know that Ritsumeikan University is one of most aggressive, as far as I know, aggressive Japanese private university. I mean, in Ritsumeikan, I heard that everything is changing. Is that right? Okay, so President Kawaguchi will give us his experience in Ritsumeikan University.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the participants. Throughout the world, we are now in an era of higher education reform. Europe has been reforming its educational system beyond the framework of individual nations. The reforms in Europe were directly triggered by the understanding that intellectually competent human resources are the very wellspring of competitiveness in a knowledge-based society, and at the same time, the surest path to creation of sustainable society. The same holds true for Asia. Asian countries have had to take steps towards higher education reform in response to global competition through a unique way. So far, the cultivation of human resources in Asia has primarily been about catching up. That human resources required for this were capable of understanding and applying those newly introduced ideas. However, the situation has been changed in a twofold manner. One change is that many of these countries have already caught up with the advanced Western countries. The other change is that the Western countries themselves are now searching for a path different from the conventional way. Thus, Asia has entered into a new era within which it must open new paths of development without having any models to follow. Education must shift from catching up model to the creative model. The current strategic goals for higher education in Japan can be summarized into 3 points. At first, is to establish world-class education and research centers, so-called Center of Excellences. The second is the plan for 300,000 foreign students, which is designed to increase the number of foreign students from the current 120,000 to 300,000 by 2020. In 2009, 13 universities, including Lithuania University, were selected as the core university for internationalization. The third is to improve the quality of education and therefore quality assurance system. What matters most here is the formation of core and basic competencies rather than knowledge in specific areas of expertise. This is the same as the former presenter. What students must acquire is basic intellectual competencies, such as critical thinking, logical analysis, and communication abilities, so on, rather than knowledge and skills in individual areas of expertise. What we have to ask now is, how can we foster these competencies? Basic intellectual competencies cannot be acquired through just reading. Learners acquire these competencies through their own individual learning experiences. Therefore, a problem-solving style of education involving participation of learners must assume a dominant position. Additionally, from the viewpoint cultivating creativity, structural diversity at university is indispensable, along with changes to the content and methods of education. Innovation comes only out of diverse sense of value and culture. Broad-minded individuals must be developed who can respect and accept cultural values that are different from their own. Therefore, what matters most in ensuring diversity at universities is the international character and nationality of students and faculty members. I would like to introduce how these strategic issues are being addressed at Lithuania University. 7 Lithuanian projects have been selected as COE programs by government. And currently, 3 of these projects are underway. Secondly, the globalization of Lithuania University has been a constant pillar of our reform since the 1980s. In 2000, we established Lithuania Asia Pacific University, APU, where half of students are from Japan, while the other half of foreign students, and lectures are given in both Japanese and English. After nearly 10 years, APU has become an international university where 2,800 foreign students from 97 countries and regions and 3,000 Japanese intellectuals. While the support of next Lithuania University is planning to accept over 4,000 overseas students in 2020, 4 times the current number by establishing graduate and undergraduate degree programs that are taught entirely in English, as well as various short programs. The current focus of Lithuania University's reform policy is the improvement of quality of education. The goal is to form and sustain core and basic competencies. Universities should play the role of facilitators that make students aware of this idea, allows their appetite for learning, and encourage them to persist in their studies. At Lithuania University, this is called learner-centered education. Lithuania University is a large-scale private university, thereby placing emphasis on small group learning in which students learn from each other. I refer to this small group education as Japanese-style university education. That is because this small group education style reminds me of Toyota Kaizen small groups, which have succeeded in becoming a Japanese way of corporate management. On the other hand, it is obvious that core and basic competencies cannot be focused formed only through university education. There is another school of thought that both primary and secondary education is of decisive importance in developing these competencies. Primary and secondary education in Japan has been acclaimed internationally for being successful in the formation of high-level academic ability. Recently, however, the tendency toward a decrease in academic ability has been recognized by the Program for International Student Assessment, so-called PISA, of the OECD. A tendency which is especially marked in science and mathematics, as more young Japanese are moving away from sciences. This is partly because all students who want to go to university can now do so, part of the so-called age of all go to university. The problem is that the substance of academic ability and the method of forming it are lost when university entrance examinations are no longer an incentive to learn. The purpose of education lies in the formation of lifelong appetites and habits for learning required for a person to live in a knowledge-based society. The Ritsumeikan Academy includes one primary school and 4 affiliated senior, junior high schools, as well as Ritsumeikan University and AP. We have been making efforts to develop education in these Ritsumeikan schools into a systematic continuum of education. What is pursued here is not education for university entrance examination, but education to develop students for learning in universities. In line with these policies, these respective affiliate schools are developing unique education methods. The most successful and acclaimed school in continuum education at Ritsumeikan is the primary school. As part of a novel approach at Ritsumeikan, we have divided the 12 years of primary, junior, and senior high school education into 3 stages, each of which is composed 4 years. We place more weight on the first stage up to the age of 10 and focus our effort on the formations of an appetite and habit of learning. A number of innovative methods of education have been introduced. Students start to consult a dictionary in the subject Japanese from the first grade. A method of enhancing calculating abilities through game-like elements has been introduced. And emphasis is placed on reading aloud in the subjects of English and Japanese. The EU has standardized the university system of the countries within its regions through the so-called Erasmus and the Bologna process to improve the overall quality of university education and develop the intra-regional mobilization of students and teachers. Now, what about East Asia? It is said that the 21st century will be the era of Asia. It goes without saying that the era of Asia cannot be realized without competent human resources. However, we cannot say that Asian countries are enhancing intra-regional cooperation for both cultivating competent human resources and improving the quality of higher education. In Japan and Korea, where the rate of public expenditure in higher education is extremely low compared to the rest of OECD countries. Whatever the fields of configuration of intra-regional cooperation in Asia, competent human resources will be indispensable. These individuals will be required to be good-willed and cross-culturally understanding as well as intellectually competent. The more diverse Asia becomes, the more people of this nature will be required. University leaders in Asia are responsible for working together to cultivate such highly competent human resources. With these circumstances in mind, I'd like to suggest launching an Asian version of the Erasmus project by Japan, Korea, and China. The universities of Japan, Korea, and China have been developing various exchange programs by conducting a number of mutual agreements. We now have to take the next step and bring these countless individual networks of cooperation to a national level to organize and enhance them in both quality and quantity. Firstly, discussion on governmental level should be started. Regular discussions at the summit level have just begun between Japan, Korea, and China. These regular discussions on individual issues are very significant. Fortunately, the promotion of the East Asian community was one of the campaign promises made in the manifesto of the new administration of the Democratic Party of Japan. The new administration should take the initiatives in implementing these efforts. Secondly, voluntary efforts on the part of universities should be enhanced without depending on the government. Inter-university consortium should be formed to launch specific projects. Thirdly, Rhythmaker University is planning to start up these efforts too. Rhythmaker University will take the initiative in accepting Asian students and sending students across Asia as one of the core universities for internationalization. What matters here is to prepare the preconditions for these efforts, such as programs, scholarships, and dormitories appropriate for Asian students. We are determined to promote these measures as much as possible under the parameters of our status as a private university. There are the practical issues facing higher education in Asia as I see them. Thank you for your kind attention. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you, President Kawaguchi. Well, he again pointed out the importance of university cooperation between universities, and he suggested to launch an Asian version of Erasmus project. I think it's a good point, and that point should be further considered and discussed in future. Okay, then, thank you again, President Kawaguchi, and then now let us move to our final, last speaker. Well, he's from Keio University. Again, all of you may know that Keio University is one of the leading university with a long history in Japan. And President Atsushi Seike will give us his experience about the cooperation universities.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As the chairman said, I am the last speaker. And as you know, last speaker has advantage and disadvantage. Advantage is I can criticize all kinds of what our colleagues said. And disadvantage is almost all of the good things are already told by my colleague. And my problem is I can't find no criticism on my colleague's presentation. So let me take all disadvantage of as a last speaker. By the way, I happen to know that Professor Skolton let me know 3 of these people sitting on the stage as a medical doctor. So I'm a bit comfortable because if I'm gonna falling down during my speech, maybe one of them come to rescue me. Anyway, let me start. It's a great pleasure an honor to be here as one of the speakers on the very important topics, and I appreciate this opportunity a lot. It goes without saying that the most important thing for a university as a research and educational institution is to maintain and to improve the quality of education and research. And any discussions regarding the quality of education and research must be based upon consideration of unprecedented changes that Japan and other developed countries are experiencing to the structure of their societies. This is naturally an important point when thinking about research quality. However, it is also extremely important when thinking about the quality of education. In a time of great change, the ability to think for oneself is more important than ever before, because trying to solve problems by continuing to use old ways of thinking, old institutions and old practices will make it difficult to find solutions. We need to be able to accurately understand new situations to build these foundations for solving problems. Since the beginning of the world economic crisis that began with the collapse of the Lehman Brothers, the world economy has undergone a major transformation. And another even greater long-term change is a change to the structure of society due to an aging population. While all developed countries are experiencing unprecedented aging population, the rate of aging in Japan is exceptionally high. As seen in figure 1, figure 1, please. Yes. Oh, no, it's unemployment rate. Yes. As seen in this figure, already in Japan, more than 22% of the total population is over the age of 65. And it is predicted that by the middle of this century, over 40% of a total population in Japan will be over the age of 65. This will have profound implications on the lives of the young generations particularly. To give an example, when this year's university freshmen were born, maybe around 1990 or 1991 or so, the proportion of the people over the age 65 at that time in Japan had just reached 10%, 1 in 10 of the total population. However, when the majority of these same freshmen will graduate in 2013, just 4 years ahead, 1 in 4 people will be over the age of 65. More than 20% of the total population in Japan will be over the age of 65. And when they are in their 40s, in the early 2030s, and in the prime of their working lives, 1 in 3 people, 1/3 of the total population in Japan, will be elderly over the age of 65. And eventually, when these freshmen themselves have become elderly, in the middle of this century, 2 in 5 people will be over the age of 65. In other words, as a society ages, these freshmen will experience fundamental changes to the structure of society, with the Japanese demographic pyramid changing to a bell shape, then to an eventually sort of an inverse pyramid shape. Yukichi Fukuzawa, the founder of Keio University, my university, also lived in a time when Japanese society experienced a great change to its structure. In 1858, Fukuzawa established Keio University and was later to become a great intellectual leader and educator for Japan during the Meiji Restoration and afterwards. He spoke of his generation, who had lived through the period of social transformation in mid-19th century that took place in Japan from the opening of the ports at the end of the feudal Tokugawa shogunate through the Meiji Restoration. He said, "We have lived two lives at equal." And during this period of change in Japan, when their whole sense of values and social institutions had completely changed, and at that time, Fukuzawa relied on jitsugaku, or practical learning. While practical learning, or jitsugaku, might be considered as academic studies that are of practical use, of course, it has that means on one hand, but on the other hand, Fukuzawa used this term to mean science, or positive science. And this science, or positive science, would enable us to understand the real truth of things and allow us to solve problems based on this understanding. Fukuzawa, above all things, placed importance on intellectuals who relied on a scientific and empirical spirit. Thinking for oneself is about making it a habit to think scientifically and empirically. This means identifying problems that needs to be solved, and then hypothesizing as to the cause and effect, and objectively testing these hypotheses and drawing a conclusion. The ability to identify a problem, form a hypothesis, test it, and draw a conclusion is a very essence of what it means to think for oneself. A liberal arts education is the foundation for cultivating the ability to think for oneself. Through understanding broad academic studies, students have many opportunities to identify problems which need to be solved. Also, through learning, students can experience the same process as past scholars sought for themselves, and they can learn what it means to form and test a hypothesis. In addition, carrying out solid research in specializing fields also helps to build these skills. For example, writing a graduate thesis or carrying out a graduation research project involves identifying a problem, forming a hypothesis, testing it, and drawing a conclusion. These are all of the elements of thinking for oneself. I believe there is a great value in developing this ability to think for oneself. First of all, the ability to think for oneself can add a new value. For a researcher, of course, this could be identifying a problem that has yet to be solved, form a hypothesis, test it, and find a solution. That's the essence of research work, of course. And for business people, the ability to think for oneself can add new value through developing new products or services or new business model. Thinking for oneself is not only involved in adding such big new values, but it is also a part of everyday business operation. Any kind of intellectual work involves this ability to think for oneself. This morning, you may see the picture of Dick Fosbury of high jump. You know, he's a very innovative high jumper, and he got a gold medal in, I think, Olympic game in Mexico City by using his very innovative jumping style, which is now very conventional ones. So, in a sense, thinking for oneself has a very high value even in the sports world, of course. The second advantage of thinking for oneself is that it provides the foundations for good decision-making. Decision-making is not just a clear-cut decision of which is better or which is worse, but instead it's a matter of comparing the advantages and the disadvantages, or the so-called trade-off, like the cost versus benefit or risk versus return. And the more important the decision, the more difficult the trade-off. Thinking for oneself on the spirit of Fukuzawa's sense of jitsugaku or practical learning, so therefore will help us to make the right judgment by objectively and rationally weighing up cost versus benefit or risk versus return. Being able to objectively analyze means that we cannot allow ourselves to be driven by wishful thinking or just feelings. In other words, we need to acquire the ability to be intellectually tough. In order to develop these abilities, we need to provide a small group instruction to ensure in-depth liberal arts education and research supervision. And as Professor Kawaguchi mentioned, I think these small group education in Japanese university is a very unique aspects for the Japanese university. However, this costs money. And unfortunately, with the effects of the world economic crisis having already reached universities, the cost of providing high-quality education is a bit burden for us. It is not an easy task to advance the quality of education by providing a small group instruction in this financial situation. Is not easy. And when the financial markets fell after the Lehman shock, frankly speaking, the value of Keio University's assets decreased. And in the cash flow, capital investment gains, roughly speaking, halved. And from the standpoint of being prudent, we have to make the decision to have a more conservative investment policy, and therefore the profit from the low-risk investments are naturally likely to be small, even if the market returns to bringing average yields. So under this financial condition, it goes without saying that the bottom line is that we cannot let the quality of research and education drop. Therefore, we have to make some sort of trade-off between quality and quantity in terms of resource allocations. Universities may need to make the decision not to expand too much, but to improve the quality of their research and education. We will need to revise our own initiatives, including our investment plans in Keio. Now, what are the important aspects of structural change in terms of human resource development? Apparently, one is the aging population, as I mentioned earlier. Without a doubt, as I mentioned earlier on the figure 1, the most important mid to long-term challenge facing developed countries is aging population and the low birth rate as its cause. And it is becoming increasingly important for developed countries with this aging population to invest in human capital. This means that even though the size of the workforce will decrease as society ages, we don't like to see the decline of GDP. So we therefore need to increase the productivity of each member of workforce. We cannot achieve this purpose without investing in human capital, of course, as you know. And universities, especially those in developed countries, have an important role to play. Developed countries must increase their labor productivity in advanced industries area by using high quality of higher education. It is also important to get people to stay in the workforce even as they grow older, as we need them to make a contribution to society in the aging society, so that we can have probably, many, kinds of white-collar workers engaged in the intellectual works, mostly, at least into their 60s. It will be necessary for them to, in a sense, in order to keep these older people in the workforce, it is going to be necessary for them to go back to university or sometimes go back to graduate school during their working lives to keep or improve their working ability. And I think that Japan and Korea can lead other developed nations in examining this relationship between an aging society and investment in human capital. This is because both Japan and Korea are aging at an extremely rapid rate, and they share the same causes which have resulted in the aging of their populations. As we saw earlier in figure 1, this figure, the Japanese population is very rapidly and drastically aging, but not too far behind Japan is Korea. As you can see in this figure, while 10% of the population is currently over the age of 65, but this figure is going to jump sharply, and by 2033, it is going to be at the same level as Japan will be in 2013. And there is even a possibility that Korea will overtake Japan in the distant future. This aging population has been caused by longer life expectancy and longer life expectancy and lower birth rate. For Japan and Korea, it is a low birth rate that had the biggest impact on the aging population. As seen in figure 3, the total fertility rate for Japan has been declining over the past number of decades, and it became as low as 1.37 in year 2008. My understanding is that the situation in Korea is even more severe, where the latest statistics show the birth rate to be at 1.19. On one hand, with a low birth rate, we might think that the Japanese and Korean universities will be in competition for recruiting new students. However, on the other hand, this is an opportunity for universities to work together in creating renewed demands for the university education. In particular, universities can make themselves more attractive to their own students and overseas students through furthering education collaboration. A low birth rate and an aging population have brought such management issues for universities, but it will also bring a wide range of opportunities for research in university. There is a growing demand for fundamental and practical research to help find solutions for problems in the aging society, such as a review of the current pension system, as well as medicine, nursing, and employment system. Developed nations share many of the same features of the aging population and the problems caused by aging population, such as the way their societies age and the low birth rate. And we can therefore expect that the possible joint research among Japanese and Korean universities will help us to solve these problems. In particular, Japan and Korea, which are geographically close, have much potential to collaborate research, including exchanging of researchers and students. As Japan and Korea have much in common in terms of measures for dealing with an aging society, there is a possibility for focused policy research to some extent. For example, one very important measure for dealing with the problems caused by an aging society is encouraging elderly people who have the will and ability to continue working to stay in the workforce longer. If we can get the elderly to work longer, we will lessen the burden of the younger generation and be able to avoid decreasing workforce and shrinking economic growth. In this regard, Japan and Korea have the edge over the other developed countries because the elderly themselves' desire to work is very high. For example, please look on this figure. For example, in Japan and Korea, the percentage of those in the elderly, not elderly, but the early 60s, I mean this in case men aged 60 to 65, okay, who wish to work exceeds 70% and 60% respectively, as seen in this figure. And by utilizing this desire to work and increasing employment, for the elderly, Japan and Korea can produce a new East Asian model of an aging society, which they could put forth to the whole world. For example, this model would have implications for European countries who also want to increase the number of participations in the workforce. I am sure that if we could produce an aging society model from our joint research project, it could be an important tool for policy making for governments in the developed countries. Likewise, it would also be a useful reference for the developing countries, which will be experiencing aging society sooner or later. We can promote the collaboration research to build the foundations for solving problems across the world. I would like to use this opportunity to put this forth as my proposal. Thank you for your attention.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, President Atsushi Seike. At the beginning of this session, I mentioned that we are living in the century of globalization, but I finally realized that we are also living in the century of aging. So thank you very much for raising the important problem, the aging, really. In Korea and in Japan, aging is one of the most important social problem, and as President Seike mentioned, universities also have to prepare the aging problem. So we all heard from 5 excellent speakers invited for this session, and really I did expect, that the time is not enough. It is true, but even we don't have enough time. I'd like to have 1 or 2 questions or comments from floor. So, yes, please.
Thank you very much for the insightful presentations. I'd like to ask 2 questions to the President Scotton. As you may know, in Korea, that the keyword has been the globalization and the localization. So we are talking about the globalization, but not mentioning the localization. The reason that I'm talking about the localization is we are not only competing in the global level, but it also you have to compete in the local level. Universities try to globalize by having exchange scholars and different programs, but also the Korea and local government try to reach out to get the branches of the university from the other country. Like in Songdo, they try to accommodate the Johns Hopkins universities and other universities. And the question is that in order to accommodate the global university in Korea, what do we need to prepare for the physical infrastructure or the social infrastructure? And second question is, in the near future, can we expect to see the Cornell University branches in Korea? Thank you.
Thank you for the attention and the very insightful questions. I'd like to answer the second question first. Right now, we do not have plans to establish a campus, any new campuses anywhere in the world. Part of that has to do with the global recession, as the last colleague was mentioning, and some just has to do with recognition of the tremendous increase in quality and capacity that are occurring, especially but not only in this very advanced part of the world. In terms of the first question about infrastructure needs, this is a very insightful, difficult question, because we would like to think about the needs as related to some two categories of infrastructure. The category of educational infrastructure is one that we cannot make a general statement about. It depends on the particular area, and some areas will depend on infrastructure that will include laboratories and specialized facilities. Other fields will involve more access to library collections. And in the first case, those fields that have to do with scientific inquiry will require more infrastructure on site. Those fields that will be involved with information interchange like library systems, increasingly, even at very wealthy universities like Cornell, we are moving toward a model of sharing or use of shared resources. For example, we just announced recently a library sharing project with Columbia University. And probably just a few years ago, we wouldn't have imagined a cooperative project of that type. So it depends on the field of endeavor for that part of the infrastructure. But the other part of the infrastructure that's very important on campuses is what happens to the students outside the classroom and outside the laboratory. And I think in that case, it's more apparent that we need to have safety on the campus, that we need to have areas of common use so that students can get to know each other on a cultural and personal sense. And we need to have a possibility of recreational and wellness type of facilities in general. Beyond that general student life set of infrastructure, I think the rest depends on the orientation of the facilities. Thank you for the question, and thank you for your attention.
Thank you, President David Scotton. And, well, another one. Another question, please.
I'm Haejun Kim from the Institute of 21st Century Competitiveness, and thank you for the insightful presentation. I have two questions for Mr. Kawaguchi. In Korea, there are many universities which are trying to innovate their education, but unfortunately, most of the times, they end up being slogans without much results and only focused around the hardware. So as the president who has been successful in the reforms, I would like to ask you two questions. Number one is, what was the most important factor in really bringing out the success of reform? And number two, what was the most difficult part in leading the change? Thank you very much.
Thank you for questions. But this is very, very difficult to answer quickly. The Ritz-Macon has tried to innovate many educational reforms and education system. And we established many new faculties and new graduate schools. But every time we try to, why we have to reform our education system. That is because not only Ritz-Macon itself, but for all Japanese university system or Japanese education system, we talked about that. We discussed about that. That's why the many presses and staff cooperate with management level. This is very important for our university people to endeavor not only us, but for all society. That is my view. Thank you.
I think, yes, one last question, please. Yeah.
I'm Dr. Ilsa from Yonsei University, Seoul, Korea. And then I appreciate nice lectures, and it was really stimulating. And then I think as all presenters told us that we recognize the kinds of globalization. And every university needs kinds of something to do for the globalization. So just I'd like to have an idea, and I'd like to ask you whether we need a kinds of international organization or kinds of agency to arrange this kind of some movement. So every university in developed countries and also in developing countries, they need to do some more. So we need some kinds of organizer, arranger, to make some effort to arrange them. So I'd like to ask you whether there's any kinds of international movement or some effort to arrange that kind of things in a global view.
Well, I think President Tan Cho Chuan is in a good place to reply.
Thank you, Chairman. There are a number of different forums where such issues are discussed. One of them is really the kind of an university network. So that, as you may know, there are a number of networks of universities which actually consider these issues. So one specific example is the Universitas 21 network, which is actually trying to develop a general framework where its members can do joint and double degrees, so that you don't have to keep on negotiating with partners over and over again what the terms and the process of doing joint and double degrees. I think that's one very powerful way in which to do this going forward. As far as I know, there aren't actually any very specific organizations that set out to create global universities, but there do exist right now many existing networks for which global education and globalization of universities is a very big part of the agenda.
Well, thank you. Well, I was allowed to finish, exactly 4:30. So I have to close. I have to now close this session, and I think the international cooperation between universities becomes more and more important. For that, we have to contribute to cultivating global leaders who can better understand other nations' culture and their way of life and thinking. I think that is the most important issue in this century of globalization. And from 5 excellent speakers, we heard their experiences in globalization issue and university reform issue. And thank you again for the speakers. And I'd like to join, for thanking, for giving them. Thank you very much. Well, now let me close the session.
Thank you very much, gentlemen, for all of your outstanding presentation. Another big round of applause, please. And also to our moderator, President Kim Do-yeon, for such a neat moderation of this session. We're going to take about a 15-minute break before we come back for the last session of the day. And during this break, may I remind you once again, if you have this opinion polls in front of you, please send them, please write down your remarks. It will be a big benefit to the people organizing this forum for a much more advanced forum next year. We're going to take a 15-minute break and we'll be back with the final session of the day. I will see you soon.